Everyone, it's LS, and this is going to be a speed VOD review of KT Rolster versus TeamLiquid, and looking forward to watching this because I want to see if the things that I said about TeamLiquid before on Twitter are still ringing true, and I'm going to see how they fare up against KT. Initial ban starting off with Sion and Tom Kench. Again, this is, I think that, yeah, this is the first game for either team inside of the tournament. I'm really not someone to read into pick bans other than the fact that Kai'Sa's obviously really strong. The only thing that I'm going to look at is what champions that are clearly overly strong are not being prioritized by blue teams or by red teams when they become available for them. And then how are the teams overall just drafting. So other than that, I don't really care. So KT Rolster opens with a Xayah first pick for Deft. TeamLiquid is hovering Urgot. So I did not watch the plans. I still think that there's I'm wondering if Urgot is just the 2018 Worlds version of Olaf, where it just hasn't had enough time. Aatrox gets locked in for KT. I think that Aatrox is the superior pick to Urgot, and TeamLiquid actually took away Rakan to prevent the Jakan picks, and then Thresh is locked in for KT. Kai'Sa now being hovered by Team Liquid. This is probably something that KT is most likely going to expect, and the reason that they would just pick the Kai'Sa here is because you can't risk going into the second ban phase and then just having KT squeeze ADCs, because there's going to be a limited pool of ADCs that's going to function with the Rakan picks. So now Team Liquid opening up with a Taliyah ban. So the junglers are really wide open, so you have to ask yourself, we can just pause for a second, what junglers are you trying to restrict? What type of playstyle are you trying to restrict? Well, Aatrox and Urgot can both get out of hand up in the top lane, right? If you're going to be Team Liquid and you have counter pick on mid lane because you're able to reserve this, you're going to pick the jungler right here. So your jungler matchup is going to have to be going in blind, but you're going to have counter pick mid. What this means is that you probably, at this point in time, can just prioritize a jungler that is going to be well with synergy for a red side Urgot and then a red side counter pick mid lane. The Taliyah ban, especially when they have first pick, is kind of weird because I feel like Taliyah actually really plays into that part. So I do find that to be a little bit strange because they have first access to it. Skarner ends up getting taken away by KT Rolster as well. I think that Skarner actually would have a hard time ganking for the Urgot, but obviously Skarner isn't necessarily just something that you pick simply for ganking purposes. LeBlanc now being banned away by KT. And Camille was banned away by Team Liquid, and Camille would actually be a pretty bad pick for them on red side, I guess, given the way that they're going to have Urgot up in top and then the counter pick in mid. So Gragas is locked in for Team Liquid, and KT now hovering Kindred. And the insta-lock Syndra. Okay, so Syndra, so I haven't seen any of the games. I had heard that Syndra is being picked a lot again. Syndra also made an appearance at the 2016 Worlds, and I wonder if there's just something about how oppressive and strong she is, like the world stage, where people just like the fact that you can get a lead with her and she becomes grossly oppressive, and it feels very easy to just pilot her. She's not as difficult as other mids, but she's also very good in a time where a lot of mids are bad. And right now, I don't want to say that a lot of mids are bad, but they're underpowered compared to where they've been historically. So we can go back to the draft. We can talk about some stuff. So what do you have here? You have a Kai'Sa that wants to scale up. You have a Ryze that wants to scale up. One of the things that Team Liquid has going for them is that when Kindred goes to hand off the blue onto Syndra because of blue side Kindred, there is a timing where when Pole Belter has the blue buff access to him, depending on how TL is operating down in bottom lane, and depending on what Impact's doing, and depending on what the first dragon is, we can actually have some fireworks fly at that exact point in time. So that's important to note, especially because Ryze should actually have a lot of safety on the right-hand side with this jungler matchup and with the bottom lane matchup. I don't ever think that Score is going to be, or Score shouldn't be having a lot of access actually to the top in the mid lane. I think that Score's style should actually maybe be on the left-hand side of mid, right? Like in the river, around the Scuttle Crab and in between Aatrox and in between Syndra. But if Score ever actually advances forward into Xmithy, I mean, he has to do so with UCal having priority, or Aatrox having priority. Other than that, I think that the Kindred has actually played pretty neutral. I like it's not going to have an upfront aggressive style, but it's also not going to have a defensive style where you just basically ward your side of the river, you play river control, and you let your laner scale up, and you just prevent any ganks from happening, because that's not the way that KT wants to win this game. KT has basically 3 lanes which can snowball completely out of control. Kindred is basically going to posture in between these lanes and look for an opening. If Kindred gets an opening, then basically finds the target, and not trying to make a pun or whatever, but marks it, and then that's pretty much how that game plan transpires. One of the things that KT also has going for them is their 1-item spikes on all 3 champions are absolutely massive. Their 2-item spikes are also absolutely massive. So they have this massive wake up at 1 item and 2 item. And then after 1 and 2 items, they still have 2 champions that continue to hang on at 3 items and then continue to hang on at about 4 items. And then they start to wither away. TeamLiquid, on the other hand, they actually have a vulnerability to a wake up at 1 and 2 items. Ryze needs a little bit long. Well, actually, Ryze comes online, I guess, and Urgot does sort of come online at 2 items, but it's a very delayed time in the 2 items. You have to think about Ryze gets his tier, then he gets his next item, he has to charge up the tier. Urgot gets the first item, he's not instantly oppressive, he has to wind up into his second item. The thing is that the recipe components for the Aatrox, the Syndra, and the Xayah are inherently going to be more powerful. They're going to be more impactful. Likewise, that's also the same is going to be true for Kindred. One of the things that Gragas has over Kindred is base levels. If Gragas can actually have higher base levels than the Kindred, then I think that it's more impactful actually than having the itemization. So because of this, there's actually 2 conflicting styles right now, where TL is most likely going to get their shit shoved in the first half of the game, and they have to play a tightrope. Now, we talked about Kindred playing a defensive river-based style, preventing ganks and letting the laners continue to scale up and stuff. Xmithie actually should be looking to play that style and looking to be creating counter ganks, successfully making them work, turning, heads on UCal and score if something tries to go wrong in mid lane, or doing something to smeb up in top lane and whatnot, and that's basically how he has to play ahead. And then the real excitement starts around the first dragon, which is going to be on the blue. Handoff trade timing is one of the most obvious examples of when TL could look to capture that or something. TeamLiquid is obviously looking for Infernal dragons this game, or they're looking for mountain dragons. They don't really care about any other dragon. KT is obviously also looking for Infernal or mountain dragons, but they don't really care about any other dragon, although you could make an argument for Cloud Drake because of the Kindred and because of the Aatrox rotations that are available. So, let's get into the game. So that's what you're looking for at the champ select. Ow. Oh, man. Alright, so we are at ×2 speed. I know that we just paused a little bit to talk about the team compositions and what every team is trying to do and trying to accomplish, and that's basically just trying to set the tone for what we should be looking to expect inside of the VOD review, whether or not it ends up actually happening or not. So, let's see what's going on. Summoner's Rift. It looks like actually both teams are just starting with or a really safe opening. It doesn't look like it. Yeah, so it's just going to be a 5-point start. All 5 members for both teams are just standing at their respective places on the map and making sure that nothing too tricky or weird goes down. TL is just posturing right here with score. Okay, well, hold on. I don't know what Double Lift's doing. I mean, I know what he's doing. He's trying to see for KT and Deft, or KT and Deft and Mata to come like this, and then he can know that they're inside of the brush, and then he can try to just, do something with Ole right around here. Unfortunately for him, Deft and Mata were already inside of the brush. No, that's not even what he's doing. Wait a minute, what is going on? Wait, what? Did he think they were higher up? Is that what he thought? Did he think that they were going in to try to get vision or something like that? Because that's the only argument that I guess that you could end up making. Double Lift starting off the lane without flash, and he's also down a potion. This is really, really, really bad. So we look at the jungle openings, and one of the things that you'll notice is that Kindred is doing a leashless start. this allowed to happen is that Aatrox actually gets first shove up in top lane. So what this can end up doing is Aatrox gets to shove this wave, Urgot comes into the lane, Urgot arrives, Aatrox does not get to crash the wave immediately into the turret, but Aatrox should potentially be able to crash the wave into the turret on this wave, depending on how Urgot actually stands inside of the lane. Even if Aatrox can't shove this exact wave into the turret, Urgot's actually hard-pressed to thin the wave enough to where Aatrox can't get a crash into the turret. What this ends up doing is it means that Kindred, when Kindred paths to the left-hand side of the map, and when you know that Gragas is pathing to the right-hand side of the map, the lane can actually be moving back into Smeb, and this creates a very dangerous timing for Impact up in top lane, where he's vulnerable to a gank or even a pressure gank. Aatrox. Why is the... Okay. So, Score actually... taking advantage of the fact that KT is probably able to just tell him, hey, don't have any words down here. Looks like Xsmithy is coming around, and this is always really scary, smite fights like this. So Xsmithy is even now with Score on camps, but he's down the blue buff, and so now Score is actually going to get the Scuttle Crab. RNG really not going in his favor, because that could have already just been the mark. Now you can see that Xsmithy actually did his Wolves, and now they're both rushing over to the Scuttle. And the reason that I hate this really bad is because even if Xsmithy goes from his Wolves over into the Scuttle Crab, you can see that Syndra already has priority in mid lane, and Syndra has maintained priority in mid lane. Bottom lane is already a fucking nightmare. Even though I can't see top lane, I can't imagine that things are going too great for Impact. I see that he has the higher level, which, I mean, I guess that means that he's CSing the creeps a little bit quicker, which I assume means that it's actually pushing back into Smeb. Although, again, I can't confirm it. So, even if Xsmithy ends up showing up here, if they just posture with one another, this is bad for Xsmithy, because Xsmithy is now on the left-hand side of the map. The only camp that he has to go to is going to be his golems. If he goes to his golems, then his rubber band timings are going to be extremely awkward, because he can't proceed into top lane. If he recalls and goes into bottom lane, this is also going to be very bad timing for him, because Doublelift and Ole are not going to have the lane in a position where they're always going to be able to help out or try to coordinate and do anything in bottom lane. The also issue with this is that if he recalls and paths into the Gromp, he can't transition into the Wraiths because it's not an efficient route at all. You know that Kindred has the Scuttle Crab. You know that Kindred is going to clear her left side of the camp in the time that it takes you all to do this. And then again, you could run into the same predicament that you're in right now, where you're matching Kindred on the side of the map where you're vulnerable and weak. So rather than him rushing immediately to the Scuttle, I don't, because now he goes into the golems right now, and after the golems, he's caught between a rock and a hard place. I don't like the fact that Score's doing the blue. I think that Score doing the blue is actually quite stupid. He doesn't need to do it right away. He could have just done the Gromp first, or he could have done the Wolves first and then transitioned. And now you can see Xsmithy. This is one of the problems that you're going to have. Now you're going to recall, you're going to go to Gromp, and then by the time you get to the Gromp and you start finishing the Gromp, your bottom lane's going to be in an extremely ugly spot. You can't do anything there. Your rubber bands on Wolves are not going to line up, and now Kindred's ahead of you multiple camps, and Kindred's always going to be ahead on priority, which is not what you want to have happen, because you want to be matching priority, or you want to be just matching... you don't have to match priority exactly, but as long as you're only slightly delayed, then it still lines up for those counter ganks and the match ganks that we talked about earlier. Okay. So you can see here, he comes down, and Score actually, KT doesn't have a ward. Deft and Mata are not playing respectfully, and then Xsmithy ends up getting a gank. So here's the thing for me, right? We can look at this, and maybe Loco Doco would say, man, what great routing by Xsmithy. No. What terrible routing by TeamLiquid, and what terrible play by KT. We know that Gragas can only be in one place. We know that he must be on the right-hand side. We know that he does not have an option to be on the left-hand side. There was no Scuttle Crab. We know that he was forced into doing his golems. We know that his Wraiths are going to be the first camp that come up, but he's not just going to run to the Wraiths after doing the golems and sit around jerking himself off for a couple of seconds, because that just doesn't make any sense at pro play. So we know that he has to path down to the right-hand side and complete his Gromp. After he completes his Gromp, all that we need to do is have some sort of a ward that tells us, is he coming from here, or do we have something like this? Or we play around it. We use no information as information, and then we do something. So, this is just really stupid. You can credit TeamLiquid for getting a kill, but I think that the bigger problem is that KT is playing so disrespectfully that such a thing is allowed to happen. And then we have this going on, and TL is actually getting quite a few advantages. Pole Belter comes in with the teleport. Now Doublelift has a kill and an assist. Alright, so now up in top lane, looks like UCal is just going to make her roam up to top, and I don't know exactly how this is allowed to happen. So what we see here is Syndra actually shoves in the cannon wave. And after Syndra shoves in the cannon wave, you have to wonder exactly what's going on. Like, you can see the missing pings and whatnot, and then immediately Impact is handshaking a trade with Smeb up in top lane. And what I don't like here is that Smeb still has teleport, UCal's still right here, and you know that Kindred's red isn't coming up for a while. There's no reason for Kindred actually to immediately go back down into bottom, and you also have the fact that, you know, Gragas is most likely going to be pathing to the left-hand side. So if Smeb just doesn't eat this lane immediately, backs up, recalls, teleports back to the lane, Kindred paths to the left-hand side, Syndra recalls, resets into mid lane, gets priority, and then Kindred and Syndra can make some sort of pressure against the left-hand side, and then if the lane is pushing into Smeb, then Impact's in a very, very ugly spot, because it means that Xmithy gets tied up in top lane. Which takes away from the advantage that they just got in bottom lane. Okay. Now Deft and Mata are gonna shove in this lane. Looks like they're gonna clear out some vision. Now, this is one of those like off timings where you can see that the blue handoff's happening. Gragas is in proximity to bottom, but they're not gonna be able to achieve anything with it. Impact comes down, actually gets the Scuttle Crab, and you can see that Kindred and Syndra are on the right hand side. And it looks like they're just actually posturing for a kill on Pole Belter, but doesn't look like they're going to be able to get it. Now it looks like they're actually trying to coordinate some play against bottom lane. Score and UCal are both here. They actually make Doublelift and Ole recall, and Xmithy is here as well. And wow, UCal just... Alright. They almost actually got that. That was actually really, really, really close. That was a very, very confident play by UCal. And now Impact's actually shoved out of the lane. Kindred is on the left-hand side. And now the blue is being handed off into UCal. So one of the real nightmares here is that Syndra is getting so far ahead. And as long as the mid lane is winning the way that it is, it doesn't really matter about the pressure that can be exerted down in bottom. And I mean, Def's still ahead in CS from Doublelift. You can see that flash, and Score just wasn't able to get that last auto attack in. And TeamLiquid, okay, so this is fucking just like, what timing is this? What? Why are they getting Ocean Drake? There's two fucking camps up. There's two fucking camps up. A goddamn Scuttle coming up, and Syndra's gonna get priority again, and then you're gonna hand priority away to Deft and Mata. Ah, Jesus. Oh, man. Alright. Yeah, that's... So we saw no, it wasn't TL, it was like TSM. TSM was doing this stuff when me and Loco had the argument on dragons, right? Or was it TSM doing it? I don't even remember when we were doing the Gauntlet VOD reviews. Teams do this all the time. I don't think they understand what dragon actually is. Speaking of which, with Magic the Gathering Arena starting to get quite popular, I'm going to be able to hit you guys with a lot of analogies soon that'll actually make a lot of sense. Because map rotations is very similar to playing Control in a card game. And that development to get an Ocean Drake just made absolutely zero sense. Alright. So right now, TeamLiquid is still behind in gold. But it doesn't matter, they're not as behind as they should be actually against KT, but again, the real problem is stemming from that mid lane. Syndra is going to be the really scary thing, and remember, what we're also looking for is the 1 item and 2 item spikes for KT are just super, super strong, and they're extremely oppressive. The one thing that TeamLiquid has going for them, though, is that KT has not actually managed to exert too much pressure across the map. Like, you can see that the mid-tier 1 turret is still, it looks like it's still relatively healthy. It has some damage on it. Bottom's okay. Impact's turret up and top is actually okay as well. So it's not like we're going to have this catastrophic event unfold where multiple turrets just fall all at once and then TL is left to try to salvage the situation before KT gets to the 2 items. Alright. So laning phase is continuing to go on here as we are approaching the 15-minute mark. It looks like UCal gets a solo kill onto Pobelter, and I just have to see how this actually unfolds. Looks like Pobelter wanted to shove in the lane and get his recall off, but it looks like UCal just said, "You're actually dead." And this is really, really bad. And the reason that this is really bad is because with the solo kill, what can end up happening now is UCal can stay in mid despite having virtually no mana, and now the blue handoff timing for the Rise is offset. And so UCal's going to be able to shove in this wave, crash it in, and then Kindred can actually just have complete range. Like, Kindred has no obligation to recall and hand off the blue immediately, because you have to factor in Rise's death timer. I'm very doubtful that he's going to use teleport, but maybe he will. You have to factor in Rise's death timer and then the time that it takes him to walk back to the lane. Kindred could be greedy and go for multiple camps into a recall and then reset tempo to the left-hand side and synergy with Syndra and then hand off the blue timing. What this might end up doing is causing Deft and Mada to concede bottom tier 1. It looks like Score is posturing around bottom lane though, but I think that this is the time where he just goes for the red Wraiths to recall and then paths into mid. Although it looks like Score taking the red and then pathing into bottom lane, which I think is unnecessary, and I also think it's actually just quite a bit disrespectful. You can see that also it must have meant that he was wasting a little bit of time. And so this is that ugly spot that KT's in. So you have to acknowledge that Gragas, even though he's on the right-hand side, he has places to be on the right-hand side that is inside of his own jungle and not actually trying to coordinate a gank against bottom lane. So my suggestion was to have Score move up into red, eat Wraiths if they're there, which I think they are there, right? And I'm like, yeah, okay. You eat red, you eat Wraiths, and then you recall, you go to the blue, Syndra goes into mid, gets priority, comes back into the blue. This allowed you to eat the wolves, you hand off the blue into Syndra, and then after you hand off the blue into Syndra, you proceed into Gragas' left-hand side jungle. And the reason that you proceed into Gragas' left-hand side jungle is because the time that it takes you to do all of this is the time that it's going to take for Rise to get back into mid lane, be handed off his blue, and then for Gragas to proceed into the left-hand side. Syndra goes back into mid lane with the blue buff. All the meanwhile, Ole and Double Lift and stuff are doing their thing down in bottom lane, and it's a race maybe to try to get the turret against Deft and Mada's recalls, even though Deft and Mada were under a little bit of pressure not too long ago. What ends up happening here is Gragas gets matched on the left-hand side of the map by Kindred. Because Syndra has priority, they can shove Rise into the turret, and now because Rise also just got solo killed recently and there's more damage on the mid-tier 1 turret, Rise's tier 1 is under a lot of pressure. And this is something that TL doesn't actually want to have happen at this point in time. The problem is that Gragas doesn't have any value doing a match or a counter gank at this point because Kindred and UCal are going to be too much stronger than Pobelter and Xsmithy. So now, because Kindred's on the left-hand side and because there's no obligation for either jungler to be on the right-hand side and Gragas is forced into being on the left-hand side, Aatrox also has free reign. So this creates this enormous amount of pressure inside of like this rectangle where KT is just exerting so much force, and it's very unlikely that actually TL shouldn't realistically be able to do anything to get out of it. They should be forced to actually concede a lot of golden XP. And the way that they would make up for it is by doing something down in bottom lane. I'm not actually too sure about Double Lift just instantly shoving. I think that you have to acknowledge that your mid lane and your top lane are going to be under too much pressure coming up, and even though the dragon's coming up in 50 seconds, I don't think that there's a reason to crash the wave immediately. Okay. We're not actually doing any of the blue hand up. I think KT is doing the KT stuff where this was some of my main complaints with them in LCK as well, where they do these aggressive plays that can net them higher gains but it requires the opponents to handshake things. And even though UCal and score are massive right now, that was actually really, really good. That's really important for TL to get the Infernal. This is something that doesn't need to happen. And the reason that I say this is because, again, all the stuff that I just talked about, you're guaranteed to get so much value inside of here. And then when Kindred's camps come back up on the right-hand side, and you know Gragas is forced to path into the right-hand side, and Ryze is under a lot of pressure because you prioritize getting the mid-tier 1. Like, for instance, because Kindred's on the left-hand side, Aatrox can actually just freely crash, and then Aatrox can come down. And then it's basically going to be a 2v3 in mid, with Ryze basically having a turret on his last lick. After you get the turret in mid lane, then you can transition to trying to do something at the dragon. There's no reason to try to rush it and force it this fast, all the while ignoring your entire left-hand side jungle. I think this is a very KT type thing to do, and it's something that I hate seeing. But anyways, this doesn't actually end up paying off for KT, as Xsmithy seems to outsmite score despite being a level down. And let's see, teleport coming in from Aatrox. Mata ends up completely deleting Ole. Impact comes in, Kindred ult not really allowing anything. And then, I mean, TL can't really do anything in this position. I got a comment that I feel like, so don't think that I'm not seeing double lift in this, because I got a comment that I know Twitch chat's probably talking about this right now. He can't do anything. He's doing what he has to do. He can't walk up and just auto attack, because the auto attacks are in vain, because you know that Score is just going to cast ult. So any damage that he would do from standing here, okay, onto Mata is in vain. It's entirely in vain. And the problem is for him to then continue to deal any damage, he has to stand in range of the Kindred ult itself, which means that now he's susceptible to stuff, which also means that Deft is going to be getting a lot of damage onto him. And then because his team can't actually follow up from this location anything, any damage that he takes from the barrage that's going to be coming out from here, because Impact is almost surely going to go down, is not going to do anything. What will end up happening is Double Lift will leave the fight with very little HP and very little mana, whereas if he leaves the fight with full HP and full mana, at least he still has some sort of utility to stick around in bottom lane if anything ends up happening. I don't think he's doing anything that bad in this fight. KT comes into mid lane and gets the... Hold on. Some people are complaining about Ole. I mean, even if you get score here, okay? Let me just tell you something. You're not killing him. His ult's coming down. Ole shouldn't be looking to engage. They should accept the fact that they got the Infernal Drake, let Xsmithy die, and Ole should back off. But this is an example of, like, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic here, okay? This is an example of, like, TL could maybe take this fight against a lower NA team and then somehow find a way to win. Score would, like, forget where the R key was or something. But this is pretty stupid. I mean, that's an example of not knowing that you've won out on a trade and you want more. Or you think that you can obtain more when there's nothing there to obtain. Okay. So now KT, Mata, and Deft are in bottom lane, and it looks like a Rift Herald's going to go over to KT, and this is a nightmare for TeamLiquid. And Syndra also has a full pen build right now, and Syndra's the biggest member on KT's team, so this is all not looking too hot. Although, again, TeamLiquid does have an Infernal Drake. So as long as they can stabilize. So the difficulty is actually stabilizing against the Herald. If KT didn't have Herald, I would actually think that they would have a much easier time stabilizing. You surrender top tier 1, you surrender bottom tier 1, and then you just sort of turtle. Xsmithy gets caught out looking for vision in an area where he doesn't need vision, because the vision's not important, because there's no dragon over there. We talk about this in NA VOD reviews all the time. That NA teams, and sometimes Korean teams, but to a much lesser extent unless your name's BBQ Olivers, look for vision that doesn't actually grant them anything. It's something that I like to call luxury vision. Oftentimes you'll see this happen around the Baron pit, you'll see it happen around Baron River when you know the enemy team is incapable of doing Baron, but you're fighting for vision anyway because it makes you feel better, it makes you feel more comfortable inside. But ultimately it ends up leaving you exposed, and then a fight transpires, and then something's just a mess. So alright, so now score clearing out vision. And it looks like there's going to be a Rift Herald coming up, another Infernal Drake coming up in a minute and a half. And so if you're KT right now, what you probably just end up have happening is Aatrox shoves in this last lane. I don't think that Aatrox has any incentive to actually go beyond the point he's at right now. He could go back, eat the golems, come back, eat the wave, shove the waves back in, and then he could still probably recall and make it to the dragon, because again, there's going to be some dancing that has to occur. What Deft and Mata are going to try to... What Deft and Mata are going to try to do right now is they're going to try to come up to top lane, get this turret, maybe shove one wave in to cause a slow push to crash back into them. This is a multi-minute play, and what I mean by that is you get the turret, you crash the wave into them, TL takes their time CSing it, and then there's a slow push that comes back into you at the exact time that everyone's trying to posture around dragon. What this ends up meaning is that if KT ends up getting the dragon and there's a giant wave up in top lane, you recall one of the primary carries, you send them up to top lane, and you eat the frozen lane. Because it's only going to be about 22.5 minutes into the game, neither team is actually capable of getting the Baron, and then because KT is in close vicinity to the Baron and it's the major neutral objective, no one can get it, and KT just continues funneling resources into the primary carry and forces TL to try to fight them, but TL is incapable of fighting them at this point in time. So then KT has control of when they want to basically snip the bomb up in top lane and then group mid, with Aatrox simultaneously pushing bottom. So that's something that could happen. Now, what I've learned in my 4 years of being a part of League of Legends is what could happen is not often what does happen. And that statement is multiplied anytime that a North American team is part of the equation. So I'm really excited to see what ends up happening. Aatrox is going top lane so that he can waste his teleport. I'm so excited. I'm just so excited. Alright, so there's an Infernal Drake, and this is actually really good. Hold on 1 second, my asthma. The weather is really bad. Alright. Hard to breathe sometimes. Okay, so Mata actually doesn't get the hook onto double lift, and it looks like TL's actually already going to get the Infernal Drake. And so they got the Infernal Drake. The problem is that Smeb has a flank, and it looks like they're trying to just leave, but they end up all dying for the Infernal. So let's take a look at exactly what's happening. So this teleport by Smeb single-handedly just carries the fight. And the question that you have to ask yourself is KT intentionally setting this up? Are they intentionally saying to themselves, okay, well, you know, TL is going to try to get the Infernal, and we're going to let them all into the river, and we're going to intentionally just let them think that they get it for free, and then really we're going to have a flank. I don't think that's what's happening. I think this is actually just a byproduct of how the map state was and then what happens. So with that being said, they get the Infernal, and then they all get absolutely massacred. And after getting massacred here, I don't know why pros do this all the time. They use stopwatch, even though there's absolutely zero possibilities to live. I don't really know what goes through their mind, and that's going to be KT getting Baron. So we have to rewind and watch this a little bit longer. So TL doesn't know about the flank ward that Smeb has available to him, although they do see him up in top lane. So let's take a look at when he's TPing. So he's moving down. There's a ping going down from the red team on the teleport, which probably means that you see how they kite up? Probably should end up just kiting down, but also I think that they should have just had a sacrificial lamb. I think, and what I mean by that is you just try to have one member stay behind and the other members try to go down and root around like this. Problem is that it's still Aatrox, and this is going to be really, really problematic. Double lift's going to come around from the top-hand side, but I think no matter what, this is just a really, really bad map state for TL. Like right there, I don't think that everyone had to be standing where they were. Like, Ole could already be behind his team. The Gragas ultimate could have been different. They could have been standing here. They can get the damage on the dragon. Gragas gets the smite. Everyone cuts out through the bottom, and then you send a sacrificial lamb. After you get out through the bottom, you try to hug the wall and get up through top. Obviously, KT tries to come through like this and then get here. But I think that this is going to be a much bloodier fight, and the problem for KT is that even if they take this fight, if they end up winning the fight around here, the issue is that they can't make use of mid lane, and they also can't make use of top lane, and it's a very long walk to Baron. So I mean, it just makes them work for it a little bit harder, and then obviously Mata able to do so much inside of this team fight. So TeamLiquid, I mean, their desire to get the dragon is good. The way that they orchestrated it is really poor. But I mean, TeamLiquid's not really doing anything. They're just sort of getting run over. Like X-Smithy, this entire game has not really felt like anything. The one advantage that TeamLiquid got early on was mostly because X-Smithy made poor jungling routes that ended up being rewarded by KT's incompetence. And then for the rest of it, it was just basically UCal taking over the game via mid lane, and then TL being unable to do anything in top and bottom. Although I don't blame them too much with being incapable of doing anything in top and bottom. Rise ult wasn't up. Oh, wait, what? Wait. It was up, wasn't it? Hold on. No, it's not up. Wait. This is a crucial detail I'm missing here. Oh, the Rise ult could have been started before the dragon even died. Oh, that just would have been the better play. I don't know. I didn't look at... I thought Rise's ult was down. I don't know why I thought Rise's ult was down. I should have just... Well, I don't know why I thought Rise's ult was down. They should all be standing here and kill the dragon, and then you just Rise ult away. Okay, that's even worse. I mean, TL's execution on the dragon, no matter what, again, the timing, the setup, and everything, the way in which they tried to retreat, everything was just really poor. But then it's actually even worse. I thought Pobelter didn't have ult. Like, I thought the ult came up because of how late he cast it in the fight. I should have actually just looked to confirm that his ult was up the entire time. I don't know why I didn't think it was up, because it came out late. Should have been casted so much sooner. And then TL actually could have made away with the dragon. And if they make away with the dragon there, the mid lane state, the top lane state, and the bottom lane state is so bad for KT. Because, let me just rewind, okay? Well, let's just talk about this. See this? If TeamLiquid is already out of the fight, KT has all 5 members right here, okay? They're going to send one person down into bottom lane, and you see how ugly this lane is? Okay, one of the primary carries has to go like this, and then eat bottom. And then they have to come up, they have to shove the wave and shove it back. And by the time they shove it back, one of the primary carries from TeamLiquid is able to be down in bottom lane and consume the wave and then also initiate a freeze. Something I talked about in all the Gauntlet games, but we don't see pro teams do it yet. And then because of the way that top lane is, you see the reinforcing wave from blue team, one of the carries can go up into top lane, someone can go to get the red, and then again you can freeze top lane. And then because KT is forcefully going to be so divided around the map, because they're going to send one carry down to bottom, Kindred's going to go like this, Kindred's going to eat this, wrap up, hand over the blue into Syndra, Syndra's going to come back into mid and shove it in. And then because the members from TL are going to go like this, right? This is just better for TL, because now you hold a defensive position inside of this this blue area, okay? And you basically set up 2 primary carries, one in top, one in bottom, and you initiate freezes, because KT does not have a herald, KT does not have a way of forcing a turret, KT does not have a way of, you know, altering the lane states right now. It's going to take them at least a minute and a half to fix the lanes, and for them to get the lanes fixed. The other problem is they can't go out of their way to fix top lane, and then because you've already gotten to the red side jungle ahead of them, you're already going to have control over it, and they're not going to have any incentive to be in the right-hand side jungle, which then means that if they want to break the freeze that you can initiate up in top lane, it's going to cause them to invest resources into the right-hand side jungle, of which they're not going to get any real return. And then TL can actually just try to temporarily freeze the game and continue to scale off of that double Infernal Drake, because their champions do hit a tipping point where they become stronger than KT's. Okay. Now TL, not really in a very great spot right now. They're about to be 8,000 gold down. KT still has the Baron. They're just clearing out all of their jungle. And you can see that the way that top lane is looking. So bottom lane is slow pushed, I believe, into TL, and it looks like they're grouping up in mid. And these are these macro plays that I really hate out of KT. You can see Pole Belter actually goes up into top to break the freeze, or break the slow push. Aatrox is up there now. Smeb does not have teleport, however. And KT is actually taking their sweet time with these map manipulations. And it's really, really sad to see. There's a Clown Drake coming up in a minute and a half, so that's not going to be the best. Again, Clown Drake does benefit KT a little bit more than it benefits anyone else, but that's about it. I don't know why Pole Belter's... Well, actually, you know, Pole Belter can't really achieve much if he was here. No, you know, I think what actually Pole Belter's doing is good. Okay, he backs all the way up, and now he's going to end up recalling. I think this is all actually really good. Snap's not able to stop his recall. Clown Drake's actually coming up. And if you're KT, I think that you wanted to burst Clown Drake as fast as possible. And the reason that I say this is because, take a look, because people don't talk about this enough. Casters don't bring it up enough, etc. If they burst this instantly, it forces another dragon to spawn. Okay? It gives them a chance to recover on an Infernal, which KT is behind in that department, so it's a chance that they would gladly like to take, because it further increases the chance that they could win the game. This is different than if TL was ahead right now and they burst down this to try to get a third Infernal. That's an entirely different argument. That would actually be a bad play by TL. So KT should actually burst this down for a few reasons. They can get an Infernal, okay? They can delay Elder, right? So they delay Elder Dragon because they burst it down immediately before the timer goes over the limit. And TL needs Elder Dragon to win the game. So I don't know what the fuck KT is doing right now and why this isn't just immediately burst down upon sight. Because there's two massive edges to be gained from bursting it down immediately. And it looks like, I mean, I think that they're killing it right now, but it's a little bit too slow, and now Elder's going to spawn. So this is really, really bad. Not the cleanest thing from KT. I wonder if it's actually even being brought up inside of their comms. And KT and TL posturing now over the left-hand side. And this is very dangerous for TL. Now, even though there's a 7.7k gold deficit, you have to remember that they do have double Infernal Drake. So for what that's worth, and because we're also hitting the tipping point where the members on KT Rolser are starting to slow down, those Infernal Drakes are actually starting to play a really, really, really big part. Wish I could hit you guys with some sort of an analogy. But I don't know. It's like I don't know, Boros on turn 10. All right, there you go. Like KT is starting to slow down. KT is is Boros. So right now, what? Like, what the fuck are they doing? I complained about this. I even said it to Loco. I said it to Loco so many times. NA teams do this thing where they have no business being where they are. Like, what in the fuck? What obligation does TL have to be right here? What obligation do they have to be here? What about here? They don't have, there's zero obligation to be anywhere near where they are right now. What are they gaining? This is the thing I talked about earlier on in the VOD review. It's called luxury vision. It makes you feel better. You can see more of the map. You feel more content. It makes makes you feel all nice and cozy inside, like you're snuggling up to a fire and shit on Christmas with cookies or something. And someone in Twitch chat just got triggered. All right, happy holidays, asshole. So I assume that this is the end of the game because Impact decided that he needed to be considerably I mean, the whole team on TL just decided that they didn't actually want to play correctly. So all right. So that's it for the VOD review. So here's something. KT still sucks dick at the mid to late transitions. This has been a constant trend since their initial creation that I've been very vocal about. And much like TeamLiquid, they get away with doing it because they are pound for pound so much stronger than the opposition. It doesn't mean that, KT's macro is still better than most people's, but there's still an enormous amount of missed opportunities that are present inside of their play. And that's, you can say that it's fine, but it's not really fine. TL continued to do the same exact thing that I said that they were going to do, at least in this game number 1. And again, it's only one game, so I have to see how they continue to play throughout the tournament. But I'm not going to say that I'm surprised. The jungle pathing looked the same exact way that it looked inside of the LCS. Their lack of synergy and their lack of timing and rotations and lane allocations and everything was present as well. Their desire to fight over luxury vision or to try to be greedy for fights, not understanding that they're actually against real opponents now, was present as well. So not really too impressed, and we'll see what TL ends up doing in another game, maybe against a weaker team, where maybe those exact things that I just talked about can actually be even they can actually show themselves even more, because it's very interesting when you watch TL have a lead, because one of my main gripes with TeamLiquid is their biggest flaws show themselves most when they have an advantage. Very similar to KT in that regard. I used to call TeamLiquid NAKT, where TL gets advantages and they don't know what to do with it, and then they try to just outmuscle the opposition. So I said that TL versus EDG would be the NARAM. And that's pretty much it for that one.